Hello, everyone. I'm sorry about yesterday. I will try to record it again tomorrow night or later today. I didn't upload it to the internet yet because it wasn't very clear. Um, so today we'll learn about the third meal, the Shalashudis, and I realized that we never actually saw the verse in Exodus 16. So it's in 2 weeks parasha in Parashat B'Shalach where we get the manna. Moshe says, "Vayom Moshe ichlu hayom, eat it today, ki Shabbat hayom Adonai, hayom lo timtzau basadeh." So the word hayom is mentioned 3 times, and as opposed to other times where the Talmud says that hayom is referring to Rosh Hashanah, it's very clear that he's talking about Shabbat. It was after the elders came to him and said that there were people who gathered a double portion on Friday, and so because of this remez so for sure we need lechem mishneh from that verse, and for sure we need to have 2 meals because that's what every day we have, according to what they used to do in the old days. And last but not least, because the word hayom is 3 times, that's why we have 3 meals for Shabbat. And um, the learning today is in loving memory of Thero's father. Thero, what's his name, please?
Yitzchak ben David.
Thank you. Neshama heavenly. Yeah. So these are
Thank
the three times that we have the word hayom, and then we'll go straight into the different discussions about shalashuris. If one does not have bread for Suda Shlishit, and I'll just say this, that when it says to have lechem mishneh, to have a second loaf of bread, what they used to do in old times, because they didn't have any way of refrigerating or keeping something fresh, is they would buy 1 loaf every day, early in the morning, and that will be for the meals for the family. If they had a larger family, obviously more than one. But what they used to do in terms of Shabbat was that on Friday night, they would make the hamotzi on lechem mishneh, and then the next morning or lunch, whenever they had the second meal, that would be the second loaf of bread that they had from the night before. So, and obviously, we can't even imagine what economic troubles people had in those days. I read a while ago an article about how many day schools or Jewish day schools there were in the Bronx, and people had to basically choose between spending $6 a year for their children's tuition as opposed to $6 a year that could buy tens of loaves of bread and milk and sugar and flour and everything else. And so they didn't go starving, but we don't recognize how much people were so poor at that time that's how the first sentence here is, if one does not have bread for Suda Shlishit. So that's like just to mention that. And going back to what we talked about yesterday, finds it difficult to eat bread because they're already full from lunch, and it's the winter Shabbat, and it's very short. So that's the introduction. B'diavad, which means if there's no other choice, he may fulfill his obligation by eating mizonot, so cakes and crackers and baked goods that aren't hamotzi. Although one may not use mizonot for the first and second meals, which is a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, when it comes to Suda Shlishit, some maintain that the primary purpose of the meal is to increase one's delight, not to reach satiety, so one is not obligated to eat bread specifically. Therefore, b'diavad, one fulfills the obligation with mezonot. If he does not have mezonot either, or cannot eat them, either because he's already so full or whatever, he should eat meat or fish. And last but not least, if one has no meat or fish, he should eat fruit, preferably cooked, since cooked fruit is considered more akin to a proper meal. So again, in the ancient times, they didn't eat fresh vegetables. They had pickles, and they had all kinds of other like cooked zucchini and squash and other things like that. So even though we consider them vegetables, they really might be considered as fruit. And the last one, which I think somebody made it up just so they can, is that people say that you can be yotzeb with divrei Torah. First, Shlishit, I'm sorry, but that's food for the soul, not food for the body. And I found no actual source that says that that's appropriate. Ideally, one should plan his eating so that he will have an appetite for Seudah Shlishit. If it turns out that he is eating Seudah Shlishit not long after lunch, like we talked about yesterday, he should eat less at lunch so that he will have an appetite for Seudah Shlishit. If one was not careful about this and as a result is full when it is time for Seudah Shlishit, he may eat a bit more than a kaveitza of bread and thereby fulfill his obligation because we have to bench only after eating a kabeitza, which is double kazait. B'diavad, he may even eat only a kazait of bread if a kazait of bread or other foods is still too much and would cause him grief or pain. He has lost his mitzvah opportunity, but there's no punishment because this is again just the enhancement of Shabbat and just poor planning. According to Rambam, one must make a bracha over wine during Seudah Shlishit. Some understand this to mean that just as one makes kiddush before lunch, similarly he must make kiddush before Seudah Shlishit. However, in practice, the mitzvah of kiddush is once by night and once by day, and there is no mitzvah to make kiddush over wine at Seudah Shlishit. Others say that Rambam is merely ruling that there is a mitzvah to drink wine at Seudah Shlishit, just like he says about eating meat on Yantiv, meat and wine. And by the way, the Yemenite Jews follow Rambam's ruling that even at a Shiva house, you should eat meat and drink wine, which I think is a very small minority in that opinion, for the people who are actually in mourning. So in order to make Shabbat more delightful, indeed, several Achronim write that it is best to beautify the mitzvah by having wine at Seudah Shlishit, but then it really just any kind of beverage that's special. So I know that in Bet HaKnesset Kippah, where my parents and I davened for many years, they had a l'chaim, so it wasn't wine; it was all kinds of other alcoholic drinks. But I think that was the enhancement of the one. Again, it was just a little shot. So, and I guess everybody's Hasidim, especially today that is the Yortzeit of the Alter Rebbe. Seudah Shlishit must begin before Shkia. As long as one recited Hamotzi before Shkia and began the meal, he may continue to eat even well after Tet. However, if one was not eating bread but mezonot, fruits or vegetables, or if he was drinking, then once Shkia arrives, he must stop because these foods do not render this a proper meal. Since the time for Havdalah has already arrived, one may not eat or drink before the Havdalah in davening. One who did not manage to begin Seudah Shlishit before Shkia may start eating up to 13 and a half minutes after sunset and may continue eating well beyond nightfall, but later than that, he should not eat Seudah Shlishit. I'll just end with one interesting halacha that we learned when we were in Shalvim, is that when Rosh Chodesh is on Motzei Shabbos, which I think will happen only in 3 months, 4 months, something like that. Yeah, Rosh Chodesh Nisan will be on Motzei Shabbos. So if you're eating Seudah Shlishit into Motzei Shabbos, so at benching, if you start before Shkia, which is what's supposed to do, you're not supposed to say Ya'aleh v'yavo for Rosh Chodesh. You're supposed to only say Retzeh, even though it's already night and Rosh Chodesh. But some people just deliberately finish before the stars come out in order to not have that conflict between the two. So, as has been our custom for Friday to talk about the Parsha, and we were just talking about food, I just wanted to share with you something incredible from the Parsha. So, when the Pharaoh tells the sorcerers to throw their staffs as well and to make them into snakes or taninim, Sforno has a very interesting explanation that, and it's based truly on the simple words of the verses. So, Vayiyule taninim, so that's verse 12. Al tavnit utmnat taninim avelo betnoatam. So they looked and felt like these kinds of monsters. They were not able to move like these monsters move, or even not at all, because Hashem didn't give that power to the sorcerers. And then he explains from the fact of Aaron's staff swallowing it. It says Vayivla mate Aaron et matotam. Rashi yesterday, sorry, yeah, 2 days ago, was talking about the fact that Mate Aaron, the staff of Aaron, already became back to being a staff. But until I saw this forno, I couldn't believe that I never noticed it before. It says that the staff of Aaron swallowed their staffs, not their taninim or their snakes. So Sforno continues, this would demonstrate that only gods in heaven can grant life to inert phenomena, something pharaoh sorcerers were unable to do. And that brought me to the question of where the first time the word bala, the verb bala, is mentioned in the Torah. And of course, it's in the dream of the Pharaoh, which is in Parshat Miketz. Um, and it also ties to our parsha because it talks about the frogs that were also in the ovens as they were maybe even in the stomachs of people. So Todos, which is translated as Theodosius of Rome, he was an emperor. I don't know how he became into the Talmud, into Psachim 53b. What did Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah see that led them to deliver themselves to the fiery furnace for sanctification of the name of God? And his answer is a kal v'chomer from the frogs. That the frogs are not commanded to sanctify Hashem's name, and they went into the ovens and into the kneading bowls. So even more than us, even more so us who are commanded to sanctify Hashem's name should do that. And last but not least, I really never noticed this, and this is like a brain teaser. Where does it say that the cows that Pharaoh saw in his dream swallowed the other cows and it was not noticeable that they got fat or anything like that. Okay, it's not in the actual description of the dream. So I'll go back to the dream. It says, והנה שבע פרות אחרות עולות אחריהן מן היאור, רעות מראה ודקות בשר, ותעמודנה אצל הפרות על שפת היאור. So these mean looking cows, which were very, very thin and gaunt and ugly, stand next to the other cows that are fat. And then it says, ותאכלנה הפרות רעות המראה, that they ate them, and then it says, and he woke up. The part that he adds when he talks to Yosef, and I don't know if it was just to make it sound even worse or something else, but this is where the Bala is first written in the Torah, and so he says in verse 21, "Vatavona el kibena ve'on da kibao el kibena." Many extra words or redundant words, seemingly to describe that these cows were swallowed and it was not noticeable that they were swallowed. So I think that since we just talked about Shlishit, and we already mentioned yesterday that we might get too full for lunch, we'll try to plan rightly this week and not eat too much for lunch, or and so Bezrat Hashem will know how to treat Hashem and Shabbat and our food in the proper way, learning also from our parsha.